Joe, you about ready to go?
Yeah, yeah, let's go.
Alrighty. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our last conversation in transportation for 2024. It's always hard to believe. We'd see the number on the title card. Session 24. It's kind of hard to believe we've been doing this for 4 years. But it's great to see everybody again. The usual instructions for those of you who haven't been to one of these before. Two main things. First thing will be during the conversation, if you have any questions that you think of that you want to ask our guests or ask Joe, put those in the Q&A function at the bottom in Zoom. That way we can keep track of which questions we've answered and which ones we haven't. And then the other thing is your PDH form you will get either later today or sometime tomorrow. You'll get that emailed to you. If you have any questions about that, you can email me afterwards. My email will be on the ending slide when we finish the presentation. So bearing that in mind, I'll turn it on over to Joe.
Thanks, Andy, and welcome to everybody. Glad you could join us. I think we're going to have a excellent turnout today for a terrific guest on a really interesting topic. So glad you're here. Thank you to our sponsoring companies, of course, that make all of this possible. Nixite, Diamond and Gold sponsor companies. We really do appreciate your support. Thank you to the Strategic Initiative Council and Young Members Council who support this webinar series. Really appreciate that. So today we're talking about urban street design, and our guest is Michael Brown, PEAICP. Mike is a professional engineer in both North Carolina and Utah, coming to us from Utah today. He serves on TRB's Alternate Intersections Committee, selected for his innovative work on placemaking alternative intersections. His goal is to demonstrate how high traffic urban corridors can reduce congestion, improve safety, and support walkable development, all at the same time. Mike recently served as principal investigator for NCDOT's newly published research on that topic. He is founder of Urban Innovators, a firm dedicated to discovering and advancing effective but out-of-the-box strategies for all kinds of urban problems, most especially the marriage of transportation and healthy land uses. So, Mike, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Glad to be here.
The problem you're trying to solve, what is the problem you're trying to solve with your work on urban streets?
Well, it emerged from just a recognition that our suburban arterials are just lined with auto-oriented uses that are decaying. So I come at it from a view that, yeah, we've got to move traffic and everything, but we also need to recognize that we're affecting the adjacent land uses, and there's probably a need to help improve that.
Yeah. So I've heard you on this topic before, of course, and you're focused on fixing stroads. So tell us what's a stroad?
Yeah. Well, a stroad is kind of a derogatory sounding term in a lot of ways, but it's also extremely descriptive. It means street road hybrid, and an outfit called Strong Towns is the ones that came up with this. And the idea being that a street harkens back to historic Main Street type thing. And so you've got nice tree-lined sidewalks, buildings that abut the sidewalk. Traffic is there, but it's not overpowering, and it's probably not moving much faster than 35 if it's even going that fast. And that's kind of what a street is. And then you got roads, and their idea of a road is that it's something moving faster than 35 miles an hour, designed to move faster than that. Freeways, expressways, parkways, rural highways, railroads, these are all roads. And the thing about them is that they're limited access, or they're either limited access, maybe they've got limited adjacent uses like a rural highway. And but it's all about moving metal machines at high speed. So stroads they always start out as rural highways or rural country lanes, maybe. But then when development explodes, they get widened, and because they had been fast, there's a need to keep them fast, or at least we think we need to keep them fast. So they get built with 12-foot lanes, wide medians, and broad shoulders, and that's what attracts commercial, because now that it's got a lot of traffic on it, commercial wants to be there, but it also repels residential uses, because who wants to live right next to a high-speed, loud, noisy road, you know? So yeah, that's kind of the concept of a Strode.
Okay, and the problem is, it doesn't do either thing really well. It's not a good urban street. It's not a good highway.
Yeah, exactly. So Strong Towns came up with a killer analogy for this. They call these Strodes like the futon of transportation. And if you think about what a futon is, if you were ever a starving college student, it's both a couch and a bed. But you know, if that's all you got money for, then you do what you got to do. But it's not a very good couch, and it's not a very good bed. And the Strode is the same way. It's trying to serve high speeds, but also trying to serve commercial uses and community needs, and it's not doing either one very well.
Yeah, let's talk about the development along the Strodes. It's usually not healthy, right?
Well, it starts out healthy enough. I mean, when you first roll out a brand new wide road out in the fringes, businesses pop up and they're shiny and new and everybody loves them. But the shine wears off pretty quickly, and you get left with proverbial pawn shops and decaying parking lots and stuff like that. What happens is that businesses, premium businesses, and residents of means, they end up leaving these areas. So what you get is kind of duplicative infrastructure. You end up building new Strodes further away for all of the well-to-do that just moved, but you're also stuck maintaining the old stuff in places that are left behind. So you get a bit of an inequity problem, and an excess of infrastructure. You're paying twice as much as what you really need to if you could somehow encourage people to stay where they were in the first place instead of moving. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a fiscal jangle. What do I call it? A Jenga tower. You know, those things that if you keep pulling out the things, they fall over. That's where we're at with our finances in infrastructure. Is we've built more than we can afford, and what I'm doing is looking for ways to get back to affordability.
This is not just a North Carolina problem. This is nationwide.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, this is anywhere USA. It's pretty much every suburb built after World War II is loaded with these things. It's really hard to find places that didn't turn into cul-de-sac world and, you know, a through road every 1 mile or whatever is, and so they all get overwhelmed. Big boxes show up along at strip malls. It's America after World War II.
So you're a big part of your toolbox for fixing Strodes is alternative intersections. Let's define that a little bit so everybody listening knows what we're talking about. What is an alternative intersection?
Yeah, that was a really hard thing to wrestle with for a long time. I remember talking to you a long time ago about what are we talking about? Is it unconventional designs? Is it innovative designs? And I finally settled on, well, when the feds came up with alternative intersection and interchange, I wrestled with that for a while, but I finally made peace with it and said, I like it because to me, it says it's an alternative to the default. And to me, the default is the double left turn lanes with four-phase signals at every intersection, you know. And so, and anything that's an alternative to that, in my mind, is an alternative intersection.
That's a pretty big wide spectrum there. Covers a lot of ground. You're really talking about reducing the number of signal phases as well. Get down from 4, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think 4 is the definition of inefficiency, at least in throughput and capacity. You know, engineers don't really have a choice when the traffic gets high enough for safety's sake. You got to add the left turn phases, or you're going to have serious crashes, or you're going to have movements that just cannot be served in a reasonable amount of time. So that's why it's the default, because we get pushed into it. We didn't want this to happen, but it is happening. And what are you going to do?
So how can an intersection help us resolve the land use issue? I know you talk about placemaking intersections. So hit on that a little bit. What do you mean by that? How can an intersection do anything?
Well, okay. So first, I think if we think about what an intersection does to inhibit walkability, if you think about these strode intersections, it's always 2 lanes each direction, or maybe 3 lanes each direction. And then when you reach the intersection, you widen out and have dedicated left turn pocket, or 2, or even 3. There's a dedicated right. So the amount of pavement to just get from one side to the other, if you're a pedestrian, it can be really big. I've measured some that are 150 feet. That's a half of a football field. And so it's so intimidating. And, you know, if you're a pedestrian and there's all these multi-phase arrows going on, and if you don't know if it's your turn to cross, and when you try to cross, you're looking every which way to see if somebody's going to run you over. And in these nasty environments, people might run you over because they're looking at other cars. They're not looking for you. And there's, as you know, it's, what is it, 32 conflict points at a 4-phase strode. And that's just a lot to look at, a lot to be thinking about. And people make mistakes when there's that many things to be thinking about. And so I think that, well, so that's the big problem with a strode intersection. So what is an alternative intersection, and what is a placemaking? That's what you asked, right? Yeah. So, well, the alternative intersections phenomenon got started because engineers were looking for ways to fit more vehicles through an intersection without having to build a bridge. And you did so much research on this and long ago. And that's all well and good, but we approach it with the mindset of move more vehicles at higher speeds safely. So we're still in the mode of 12-foot travel lanes. We're still in the mode of very large clear zones. A tree nearby is going to kill somebody. And so these are the frameworks we sit in. And so with placemaking, I thought, if that's what a product line is, then we will repel the ability to remodel these decaying areas. And property owners and cities are out there saying, we need help. I got no money to fix my parking lot. I got no tenants, and everybody moved to the new and shiny stuff, and I'm left here and I can't do anything about it. So the cities come to the DOT and say, hey, we need to remodel this street. We need complete streets. We need transit, we need bike lanes. They don't know what they need, but they know they need something. And so they're just kind of grasping at straws, hoping that the bike lane is going to fix it all. And but it's a bigger problem than that, because it's when you got hardscape from edge to edge and the engineers don't really have a good choice of how to change that, then a bike lane is nice. A few street trees, if you can fit them in, will make it better, but it isn't going to be transformative in the way that I want to make it transformative. So so the placemaking intersections. When I first discovered the alternative intersections, I was fascinated by the capacity gains and just the unusual ways of dealing with lefts. That was cool. But I also started to notice that there were a handful of them that looked like they could fit into urban areas better than others. So, and when Utah built our first continuous flow intersection, I looked at that and I said, it's awesome, but that'll never fit into an urban walkable space. That's a tough animal to force into that box. But then I thought quadrants are kind of the same as a CFI. It's a mid-block crossover. You just go behind the development instead of in front of it. And it might not be as simple for coordination. It might not be quite as high a capacity, but it has other virtues beyond just capacity, you know, and some of that is giving you backside access instead of front side access. And then there's you can narrow up the footprint of the main intersection, because when you don't have double lefts, that's 24 feet of space that you can surplus to some other use. And so I was like, awesome, quadrants have got some placemaking potential. Let's think more about that. And then I went on to U-turns. I was like, yeah, that one's a little harder, but it's still possible. And then I saw the one-ways. I was like, oh, one-way streets, they don't need left turn arrows. Nobody's thinking about them as part of the alternative intersection suite, but they kind of are, because they're an alternative to the default four-phase intersection, you know, because it's more intersections, but each intersection is either three-phase or two-phase, and so there you go. It's high efficiency, and by definition, they're smaller footprints because you don't have to serve both directions.
How about, Mike, I've also heard you talk many times about slow speeds, fast travel times. So how does that come into the picture here?
Sure, yeah. So when I used to have my traffic engineering hat on, we would talk about delay reduction and that we used to be fast speed, and now we've gotten sadly slow, but this new whiz bang trick will make it fast again. And so it was like, and then I thought, well, that's one way to approach it, but another way to think about it is, if we have introduced a design that is more efficient, creates more capacity and reduces delay, then that's also created an opportunity to slow down the approach speeds of traffic, change the speed limit, basically using traffic calming strategies. And we can still demonstrate through microsimulation and other ways that people are better off than they otherwise would have been. It's faster. So and what I mean by that is you've got what's the best way to play? Well, I got a great graphic that maybe it's a good time to share screen, because
This will be a first for our conversation series, but we kind of knew this was coming. So go ahead, Mike, share your screen.
yeah, because this is all about graphics that the work that we just did together, and so it's going to be important to do this.
And hopefully everybody now sees Mike's image up on the screen. I got it up on my screen for sure.
You do?
I do.
Okay, good. Then I'll just carry on. So I've got this stored on my website. So I'm here at urbaninnovators.com, and I'll just go there. So if I go to click the projects button, we're going to be here. A lot of these graphics are here that we're going to talk about today. So if you wanted to go there on your own, you can do that too. Go to there, and then there's this North Carolina project. And on that main page that shows up to right there, that's the graphic that I wanted to show. So yeah, the phrase that we coined was drive slower, travel faster. And the idea being that if you're Bugs Bunny there in that red car, yeah, you got a fast car, a fast speed limit, but if you hit so many red lights, then are you really moving very fast? In urban environments, you know, if the speed limit is 45, you're probably driving 50, if not faster, when it's wide open. But then you reach the signal, and your average speeds might drop down to 15 or 20, even in the, you know, in the peak congested periods. So the alternative intersections, they're so efficient because they reduce the number of phases. You can see on the left there that a 3-phase signal just means turn off one of the left turn movements. And a 2-phase is somehow turn off both of them in the main intersection. And that by doing that, you get more green time, and with more green time, you can afford to reduce the speed limit. And what we did in the research we just did for you guys was we tested some cases. Okay, what if we did drop the speed limit from 45 to 30, so a 15-mile-an-hour drop? Well, we measured that the average speeds over like a half a mile distance, maybe even more than that, and it truly did come out faster. So after we recovered so much green time, the average speed had increased, even though the cruise speed had decreased by 15 miles an hour.
And progression through the signals plays a part in that as well, right?
Yeah, it does. And progression is especially, well, anytime you got more green time, then you can get better progression. But with one-ways, it's phenomenal. You can coordinate one-ways perfectly. Yeah.
At a slow progression speed, but they're still moving without delay.
Right. Well, this graphic right after that is one that planners like to point to, is because traffic engineers, we pride ourselves on that we're about a couple things. High throughput, high capacity, and safety. Safety, safety, safety. That's the thing, right? But I would think safety is, it's really about safety at high speeds. But we can get even better safety if we focus on safety at low speeds. And that's what that thing's about, is if you get hit by a car at 20, you're 10 times as likely to survive as if you get hit at 40. So
is it easy from this website here to show us a couple of the images of the particular designs?
Yeah.
So I don't know which one you want to start with. First, maybe let's start with the U-turn if it's convenient for you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll go back to the top, and these 3 buttons here will get you to each of those.
But you know, most of us would think of U-turn in this state, we would call it a RCI, as a high-speed rural design. You need lots of space for the diameter of that U-turn. It's tough to find that kind of space, and especially in the kind of strode environment that you're talking about. So, you know, the main question to me is how do you end up fitting U-turns into urban areas?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how you think of finding space, I guess, because sure, it's not the U-turn may not exist be possible within the current right-of-way footprint, but suburban areas are not like um, busy downtowns where the buildings are right up against the sidewalk. The buildings are usually, 40 feet away from the sidewalk, maybe more. So, yeah, you're going to impact private property usually when you try to identify where you're going to put a U-turn, but it's probably parking lots or landscaping or something like that. And there's a tendency to freak out and say, oh no, this is going to take out 10 parking spots. It'll be too much. But I think that there's I have a lot more optimism than that we can demonstrate to the property owners that they get more on the backside than whatever they lose on the front side. And that if they knew what our vision was and our plan was, they'd be falling all over themselves to give us the 10 spots that we need, but yeah, I mean, another thing inherent in your question is, does every U-turn need to accommodate 18 wheelers? and I say no, they don't need to all accommodate 18 wheelers. I mean, if you're gonna do a raised median on a long length of corridor and you're going to introduce U-turns as a mechanism for how people are supposed to turn left on when you've made it nearly impossible to turn left, then yeah, every once in a while you need to put down one of these 90-foot diameter U-turns so that the truck that's traveled along for a mile now can finally figure out how to make the U-turn. But for everybody else, quarter mile and you do a little one for cars, another quarter mile, you do another little one for cars. And you finally find a good place for trucks and you say, all right, right there, this is where we're going to deal with trucks.
Show us an image. What does that end up looking like?
Sure. Well, there are so many different U-turn designs, and this first one is just leverages roundabouts, and it's different because we think of roundabouts as being directly in an intersection, but they don't have to be. They can be off to the sides. And if they are off to the sides, then there's a lot of virtue that can happen. So you see right there, the purple cars are requiring a dedicated phase, but with the roundabouts, then you can reroute and get rid of that phase. You go through the intersection, make a U-turn and make a right. And that's basically the RCI or the R-cut movement, but it's using a roundabout to do it. And what's cool about this is that it also not only is useful for the phase reduction, but it makes things safer for like the blue car that otherwise has to take risky gaps, and the yellow car, which has to take even more risky gaps.
Especially the yellow one. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So this is a perfect way to, even if you didn't introduce these U-turns for the sake of improving left turn efficiency and getting rid of phases, doing this will make a raised median corridor a lot more navigable and a lot safer. So that alone is a good enough reason to do that. So here's one that is kind of a fun comparison. So this is just looking at a typical Strode, east-west, and north-south kind of looks like a Strode, but it's meant to be a smaller connector. We just didn't, we drew a really long right turn lane and a really long left turn lane, but it doesn't have to be like that. But just looking at it, this is how I spot for opportunities in Strode environments to do things like this. Okay, that yellow space is what I need to make this work. And so then when you roll that out, this is the design concept we came up with for. And so this is a lot like the R-Cut, but what it does is it's instead of like a typical loon design, this is actually flaring out the main lanes and creating a teardrop type of a thing in the middle. And what's useful about that is it forces a slowdown on the main line. That's one of the things that's good about it. Another thing is it creates a rather large pedestrian island there in the you got a 2-stage crossing that's really pretty convenient. So and I think that's a very helpful thing. And then if we go to the next image, this shows kind of on opening day, it looks like this. You haven't transformed anything. You've just kind of made a nicer environment with more street trees and traffic calming strategies. Maybe you've certainly reduced the lane widths from 12 feet to something lower than that. I love 10 foot. I far prefer 10 foot over 11 because the goal is to slow things down, and you just don't slow things down enough when you're at 11. You got to make drivers feel like it's tight.
Good point. Yep.
And so after you let this season for a while and the market gets a chance to react to the infrastructure that you've laid down, then you're going to get mixed use development showing up. Now, of course, that's only true if the city has encouraged mixed use development here at this site. You got to have both elements. You got to have the infrastructure and you got to have the permission. But that's, I think, a really great illustration of what can happen over time.
Got a question that came in the Q&A from Michael. Thanks, Michael. Many of the intersection designs that reroute left turning vehicles increase the volume of right turning vehicles at the main intersection. This could lead to increased conflicts with crossing pedestrians and the need for LPI or exclusive pedestrian phases with the additional time in the cycle cancel out most of the operational benefit of the intersection design. Good question.
Yep, and I've thought about that before because it's among the reasons why the U-turn design is not my favorite design, because it doubles up the rights in order to to take out that left, and rights eventually become a challenge. Because when you got a lot of pedestrians and a big stack of rights to serve, then that can become its own problem. I'm cognizant of that issue. I think at least in the beginning, it's less of an issue. There's not that many pedestrians. When you start out in this world, on ribbon cutting day, there's no pedestrians there. It's going to work real well. Over time, there are more pedestrians. And so maybe you got to figure out what you're going to do now that there's a lot more people showing up. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, a lot of the pedestrians go to the mid-block crossings that are really excellent, I think. Yeah, you still got some at the main intersection, but we've got those 2 mid-block that didn't exist before, right?
Yeah.
Let's move on to show quadrant design. Okay, we got a U-turn corridor there. That's cool. But make sure we got enough time.
Oh yeah, we are kind of
for the other designs too. So
well, I'll just scan through these real quickly. I know everybody's probably doing all that, but give me 1 more minute on this.
Okay.
So one of the things that we did was we created a bunch of transparent PNG files that you could put onto Google Earth or something, just to kind of conceptually start thinking about what are your options in this space, and are they even remotely practical? So I think that's pretty cool, and there's some zip files and PDF file you can download to get these design concepts and bring them in. Here's an interesting one about road diets, how you can use roundabouts to get an even tighter road diet than we have ever done before. So I encourage everybody to kind of read through that little story there that's going on. And here's some kind of photorealistic renderings of U-turn environments that we created. And is that it? Yeah, go ahead and just look through that on your own. But
yeah, and point out to people that these are on the NCDOT website. Many of these images on the NCDOT website for free available download with it through the research project that was.
Yeah,
finished.
true. And
So,
I've posted them here.
Yep.
But if you have a way of putting in the chat, or somebody can, like, where to find those on the NCDOT site, that might
Yep.
be a good thing.
Yep.
So quadrant, we were going to go there, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that's one concept for quadrant. Here's another one that's a lot like the one that I just showed.
so you're rerouting the left turns onto a connecting roadway.
Yes, and it's possible to do it with a single. You can route all 4 lefts on a single quadrant. I think that's, helpful for a traffic engineering solution, but for a placemaking solution, I would really try to do at least 2 and do them in this format, where it's kitty corner like that. And the reason for that is it improves driver expectancy that what you see in either direction is kind of the same thing. If you can also just use this to get to 3-phase efficiency. So if you don't want to introduce the out of direction travel, if that's a bridge too far, a pill too bitter to swallow, then say, all right, well, then we'll route them on the red one. There's no out of direction traffic there. But the nice thing is it's kind of a get out of jail free card, that if things get bad enough and people say, what else can you do? You say, well, we can route them on the blue path. So then you go ahead and do that. But watch what this does for transforming a Strode. So if we swipe this around and look at what we've done, we don't have the double left turns there to serve anymore. There's still a left turn, but it might not need to be a double. It might be a single back here further where it can get more green time. You got pedestrian refuge in the center of the crosswalk, planted median all the way across. What I've done is placed 5 little, islands in the middle of the intersection here. 4 of them are kind of that crosswalk blocking, so you feel safe as a pedestrian. And then the center one is sending a message to drivers: don't cheat. Keep going.
Temptation to make an illegal left here, so we gotta.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you need to make it mountable so that emergency vehicles can do it, and like wide loads or who knows what might have to do it. But anyway, that I think it's great. I love this design. And what's good about this is you start to train your eye on how to find these paths. Like in this case, well, there's a path there. I can just improve it. Or up here on the top, it's like, no, there's no formal road right there, but there's also not any buildings in the way. I could create the road and do this. And yeah, it's going to require acquisition of property, and it's a little bit spendy and controversial perhaps, and the business owners are going to wonder, what am I getting out of this if I cooperate? But when you say what you're going to get out of this is an awesome road that gives you backside access to parking, and then you come down here and say, it may not take very long, and your property is hugely more valuable than it was before, then I think that the property owners in this area are going to say, how quickly can we give you the land that you need to make this happen? So same thing, we've got those Legos here, the quadrant Legos, some diagrams that talk about the different ways you can operate it and what it all means. We went through Greenville. Oh, one of the things I wanted to point out. Yeah. So when you think about how expensive it is, you look at that and you say, okay, that's affordable. You look at this and you go, oh, that's not affordable. We'll never be able to build this as a DOT. But the argument that I want to make is what we've successfully done by creating this type of environment is we've made it, well, for one, we've improved our capacity by more than 50% in the measure that throughput capacity for cars is a lot higher. But the ability to support development is 10 times high, or in this case, we can support 4 times as much development as we could previously. And so that means that if we were to densify this area, then it offsets development kind of randomly across the suburbs to about 350 acres and roughly 10 miles of suburban road, just cul-de-sacs and whatever else, and new stroads and all of that. So in aggregate, we've saved money. So this thing was expensive on opening day, but by the time all of this development comes along, we've saved a ton of money because we didn't have to build infrastructure elsewhere.
Yeah, I wish there was a easy way to account for that. Luckily, I'm not an accountant and you aren't either, but how to pay for these projects and how to realize those returns is a whole nother topic. Mike, we got a good question in from Ann, one of our champions out there. And she asked, are there some real world examples that we can go look in Google Maps where you've seen the land use respond positively to these kind of changes?
There are a lot of such places that have responded to complete streets in general and have responded to the transformation of strode to street. But there's not many examples that I'm aware of where it's responded to placemaking alternative intersections, because that's a new idea that hasn't really happened yet. With one ways, there are some. In fact, let me go there.
The town center,
yeah,
in California is one that
yeah. So like this spot right here is a really good one. So this is in San Marcos, California, and it was designed this way from the beginning. So in some ways, it's not, it's not looking at how the market would react to a retrofit. But I think it's kind of similar in a lot of ways, because the market definitely reacted to what was on the ground in the first place. And this picture doesn't show what it's like, you can go there on Google Earth and look at it, but they've built a lot of pretty tall stuff, wall to wall, 3-story, successful shops on the street. The intersections are very tame. There's a middle school right there. But I love it because this is a high capacity system. It doesn't look like a high capacity system, but that system that can support, 30 to 40,000 cars a day on both corridors. And you wouldn't notice it.
That's a good segue into the final of the 3 kind of design concepts, and that's the one-way pair, or what they're calling here town center.
Yeah, town center intersection is what these guys have kind of called this, and it is a great way to create a walkable town center type activity center from what was otherwise going to become two stroads. And so it's not easy in a retrofit to find the parallel road that you're going to do this on. So one of the things that I love to point out is, hey, it's the suburbs. There are no buildings hardly anywhere. Just get creative and think about the parking lot. So when I look at this, I think, okay, as a traffic engineer, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to reduce phases and improve efficiency. And one of the ways I can do that is just breaking out the westbound movement to another spot. And I got a mostly empty parking lot. It's not totally empty. I'm probably going to have to hit this building here, and I'm probably going to have to hit this building here. And that can feel like a showstopper, but I don't know that it needs to be. It's because when you come over here and you say, okay, if we work with the city and work with the developer, the owners, and compensate the ones that we're going to hit fairly and make it worth their while to work with us, then we can get that environment that improves the traffic flow a lot, and over time it's going to become like this. So when you say, okay, the amount of economic development that can occur around this so overwhelms the value of the little tire store that we had to take, then it's worth it, and we should find a way to raise the money to pay that guy what he needs to move his tire business somewhere else, and move on. So that's one of the real beauties about the one-ways. Another thing that's super cool about one-ways, and I got a picture down here, is what you were saying before about progression and coordination. So here's this a concept that shows maybe a historic corridor with a lot of old buildings that are really nice, but it's blown up because it was the only road in a long ways, and the traffic's on it, and we don't have anywhere else for the traffic to go. So what DOTs will sometimes do is they'll say, well, we can't tolerate that 4-lane situation anymore, so we're going to have to go to a 5-lane and get rid of your parking, but we'll put a street tree in the median and then try to make it pretty. All right, that's okay, but your speed is still going to be difficult to control. You know, you might still have it signed at 35 and people are going to drive 42, 45, whatever, because they don't feel like there's any reason not to. They're not going to get a ticket at 42, so why not? But you come down to here in a one-way environment, and you got you can control the speed. And why? Because when you set the traffic signals to fall like dominoes at 25 miles an hour, everybody quickly gets the message that it doesn't pay off to go any faster than that. So they're just going to drive 25, 26, whatever it is, but they're not going to speed because they just get to the next intersection a little too early. So this is one of the things that's, when people react negatively to one-way streets and say they're fast and furious and we got to go back to two-way, or we hate the one-way, what I like to say is, no, it doesn't have to be like that. We can do traffic calming design that gets us down to where people naturally want to go slower, and we can control the speed of those that would otherwise speed using traffic lights, but we need enough of them, which is the unusual thing about one-ways, is it does better with more signals, not less.
Let's start installing signals. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Mike got some good questions coming in now from our participants. We appreciate that. My colleague Mike down the hall, my experience with suburban quadrant roadway intersections is the common development request is for multiple driveways along the quadrant roadway within the functional area of the signalized approaches at either end. So any advice on how to balance the access management and access rights along the quadrant connector roadway?
Yeah, I think about that. But for one thing, I think it's a better problem to have than all of your driveways right at the main intersection, which is what we're usually dealing with.
Good. It did shift the problem. You're right.
It shifts the problem, but it shifts it to a spot where it's a little less critical, a little less of a big deal. And we might have to do that because it's not a good solution, but at least it's better than being out on the main road. But other ways you can do it is you can push back a little bit on the developer or on the city and say, interconnect your parking lots. We're not going to provide an access this close to the signal. It's you gotta punch through those two spaces right there and use the other guy's driveway because you're not gonna get a driveway right here. I think those are the types of things I would aim at, is trying to interconnect parking lots.
Good. Dean points out, and really appreciate this, Dean, that we actually kind of do have one of these projects underway. We, NCDOT, U5809 in Yadkin County, similar to what you're describing here, just getting under construction, and they contracted with ITRI for a before and after economic analysis of the area. So
Oh, cool. And it is like it qualifies as a placemaking type of an investment where they're
yeah, it's if I remember right, it's the U-turn type of corridor, but it definitely in an urban area, small town, but urban area. They're trying for economic development along the corridor, and we're hopeful. So yeah, thanks for reminding us of that, Dean. Yeah, NCDOT is not against these things in the right spot, the right kind of project.
well, and let me point out to y'all that one of the things you can do, I built a website a long time ago called alternativeintersections.org, and it's a wiki site where you can go in and load the alternative intersection locations you're aware of. So this would be a really good one to for somebody to go in there and create a little login account and zoom in on where this is and tell us a little bit about it. I would love that if all of you would go start loading up the cool spots around North Carolina. And I wouldn't put every single R-cut that exists, but if there's some pretty interesting ones that then load those in.
Dale points out, it gives us the name of a maybe future speaker on smart urbanism in Colgate, Nashville area. So appreciate that, Dale. Paul from CDOT, I think that's Charlotte DOT. Do you have examples of traditional capacity expansion projects that have negative land development responses? So that's kind of the opposite of the question Ann asked before, but it's a really good question. We widen the road and the business is closed, right?
I got a great one. So when Utah built the first R-cut type thing that we had ever had, they labeled it a through turn, and it was my idea. I went to the city and pitched it and said, hey, this is a good solution for your freeway problem. So they built 3 R-cuts as a way to solve a close frontage road to the freeway situation. But all I did was provide the nugget of the idea, and the Strode-minded engineers took it from there. And what happened was they opened it up, and it didn't come with a lot of beautification of the neighborhood or anything like that. And there was a gas station that went out of business because their access became so convoluted that it just didn't work as a gas station. And so it really gave the DOT a black eye on this design, because everybody hated it. Well, what they hated was the out of direction travel. And they hated the confusion and the paint. There was paint everywhere and you couldn't figure out what was going on. I thought they should have invested in channelization more than just painted lines on the road. And but also, you know, guys, this is your first one. Spend an extra $1 million to give it some cool street trees and some stuff that helps the medicine go down. Because if you don't counteract that negative of out of direction travel, you people will not like this. Everybody acknowledges that the congestion is better, like way better than it was before, but that's not enough for the community to have thought it was a good thing to do. And with the gas station went out of business, that was like, oh no, you might go out of business if UDOT comes along and does what they do. And so they should have seen that coming and maybe bought that business out ahead of time. And they could have made money even, and they could have bought that business out and sold it to another use that would have been more compatible with the new situation.
A couple minutes left. One last question from our participants. We really appreciate these questions. How difficult is it to convince municipalities and property owners to update to these types of intersections?
It's hard. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig for a new thing. They all want to see evidence that this is awesome somewhere else before they're going to be the one to do it. It helps a lot if there's a local example. Like, yeah, it's interesting that California did that, but can't we find one a little closer to us to see that it's, go drive there and see what it's like. So what I think helps overcome that, and that's a lot of the value of the effort we just did with you guys, is just good graphics to show people, hey, it doesn't have to be scary. It's when you combine the analysis that shows the traffic benefits, the safety benefits, and you couple that intellectual side of it with the visual that says, look, this is awesome. This doesn't have to be what you're used to seeing the DOT deliver. Now they may get a little cautious and say, yeah, but we know you guys, you stratify everything. But if the DOT can start showing graphics like this and say, we don't want to stratify everything, we really want to do better, then maybe somebody will give you a chance.
I like that word, stratify. Make that my slogan from now on.
Yeah.
Mike, we've got 1 minute left. Any closing thoughts? Anything we haven't covered that you really wanted to?
Well, sure. I love traffic engineers. I've worked as a planner more than a traffic engineer, but I'm still an engineer, and I speak the language and I know what you wrestle with, and I understand the criticisms that come from the walkability community, and I think they're unfair a lot of times, and I think they're underappreciative of the fact that there are 40,000 cars a day to deal with. And what I'm really optimistic about, and I hope that everyone on this call will do, is just study this topic. Go learn of the material we just created and say, finally, I've got something that I can take to the walkability crowd and say, hey, I think I might be able to help you. Let's think about this. And then just get skilled in how to hunt for the opportunities. You've got like a lot of states will have an intersection control evaluation program, ICE. And the whole point of that is to say, not everything has to be a double left turn with a 4-phase signal. Can you at least be aware of the other opportunities and study the site and see if it's possible? That's what I would do.
Excellent. And with that, we are out of time. As always, the hour goes by quick, and I'm pretty confident we could have filled up a couple more, but really do appreciate it, Mike. And thanks to Andy, and thanks to all of our participants today. Good questions that you gave us. Really appreciate that. That is it for 2024 for conversation, but we're going to come back in 2025. We got more ideas. We got more guests. I hope you like this format. I sure enjoy bringing it to you. So yep, as long as Andy's willing, I sure am. We'll be back in 25. Look for us in February. So once again, thanks, Mike, and going to turn it back over to Andy for closing us out.
All right, thanks, Joe. Again, thanks for everybody for attending and asking good questions, and being engaged with all our topics. We try to provide you a good variety as we continue doing this series. Again, as I mentioned, you'll get your PDH forms. I know it's December and everybody's kind of antsy about getting their forms and renewing everything. You should get those either this afternoon or sometime tomorrow. Again, thanks everybody for attending, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.